Hi everybody, this is SAT practice test number 3, section number 4, the calculator allowed section. So let's jump right into it. Problem 1. The graph above shows Marilyn's distance from her campsite during a 3-hour hike. She stopped for 30 minutes during her hike to have lunch. Based on the graph, which of the following is the closest to the time she finished her lunch and continued her hike? So the graph that they give you up above here has distance on the y-axis, time on the x-axis. So what they're looking for is when did she stop to have lunch and when did that stoppage finish? So if you think about this graph in distance, when she was stopped to have lunch, she would not be changing distance, right? Said another way, this plot is the slope of the line on this plot is her speed, right? And where she stopped, her speed would be 0, so the slope of this line would be 0. So where is the slope 0? Where is she stopped, not changing distance? That occurs right here. It's the only place on this graph where she's not moving towards or away from her campsite. Here's the start of lunch. Here is the end of lunch. And that's the one that you really care about. When did she finish lunch? And you can see that that happened a little bit after 1:30. So take a look at what the answers you have here. It's obviously after 12:40. It's after 1:10. That's when she started lunch. It's about 1:40, and it's definitely not at 2 p.m. So C is the correct answer, 1:40 p.m. Problem number 2. The table above shows the distribution of age and gender for 25 people who entered a contest. If the contest winner will be selected at random, what is the probability that the winner will be either a female under age 40 or a male age 40 or older? So if you take a look at the table they give you, rows are gender, columns are age. So they're asking you two specific cells of this table, basically. Either a female under age 40, so female under age 40, or a male age 40 or older. So male 40 or older, these two cells. And the other one that you're going to need to know is that there's 25 total people, right? With the probability, you need to know the total number that you could be choosing from. So the crux of this problem, really what they're asking before the question mark, what is the probability? So you have to know coming in that probability is equal to kind of the classic formulation is event. So that would be when you draw a person, it's one of the ones you care about, which in this case, the females under 40 or males 40 or older would be a true event over total number of possible outcomes. So all outcomes. In this case, like I said, our event would be if we drew someone that was female under 40. So 8 plus male 40 or older, 2 over all outcomes. There's a total of 25 people. So that becomes 8 plus 2, 10 over 25. Take a look at the form your answer's in. All the denominators are 25, so there's no need to simplify. You can see that B is your correct answer. Problem number 3. The graph below shows the total number of music album sales in millions each year from 1997 through 2009. Based on the graph, which of the following best describes the general trend in music album sales from 1997 through 2009? So when they give you a list of like what best describes, you're basically start reading your answers right away. That's just what you have to do because you have to evaluate each one against each other one. So sales generally, A would be sales generally increased each year since 1997. So you can just take a look and see they started higher, they ended up lower. Sales generally are definitely not increasing. You can just cross this one off right away. So B would be sales generally decreased each year since 1997. And taking a quick look, well, sales were higher here, they were lower here. You could possibly say that they generally decreased. So we'll just leave that as a possibility for now. C would be sales increased until 2000, then generally decreased. So here you have to take a look at specific years. So where would 2000 be? This is 97, 98, 99, 2000 would be right here. So C is stating sales generally increased until 2000, then generally decreased. Yeah, that pretty well fits the line, and even better than saying that sales generally decreased each year. It's more specific than B. So that's our front runner right now. D says sales generally remain steady from 1997 through 2009. You know, C definitely describes it better. the fact that they went up and then went down. So C is the correct answer here. Just in general, I don't like SAT questions that force you to choose which is best, just because any of these, if you just take this in a vacuum, sales generally decrease. That would be true, but you have to describe which is best. Just make sure you read each one pretty carefully when they give you a which is best type problem is all I'm getting at there. Okay, on to number 4. Problem number 4. The table above shows some values of the linear function f. Which of the following defines f? The table where f is defined and the variable n is defined. So you have 4 possible solutions here, A, B, C, D. And taking a look at these solutions, they're pretty simple. They're linear, right? You just have n minus a multiple of n minus some constant. When they're this easy, what I would do rather than staring at this graph and trying to just sort of think through what association there is, even though this one's a little easy, I personally would just start plugging into the equations. Plug n in, see if it results in f of n. If it doesn't, then cross it out, go to the next one. If it does, then keep calculating through until you find the one that matches. So just to show you what that looks like, so f of n, let's just go through A, B, C, D. So we'll start with 1. So f of 1, I wouldn't necessarily write all this out, but I just want to be thorough and show it here. So f of 1 is equal to 1 minus 3, which is equal to negative 2. Okay, so this one, the first row here checks out for A. Then you have f of 2, right? Do the second one is equal to 2 minus 3. That would be equal to negative 1. Okay, it's supposed to be 1, so that does not check out. So A cannot be the correct answer. Now do the same thing with B. F of 1 is equal to, in this case, it's 2 times 1 minus 4 is equal to negative 2. Okay, and that is negative 2, so that one checks out. Now do f of 2 is equal to 2 times 2 minus 4. So that's 2 times 2 is 4, minus 4 would be 0. It's supposed to be 1. B does not work. Now try C. F of 1 is equal to 3 times 1 minus 5. So that would be negative 2. C checks out. F of 2 is equal to 3 times 2 minus 5, which is equal to 6 minus 5 is equal to 1. Okay, so right now, C is checked out on the first 2. So it's still in the running. At this point, since the other 2 did not work out for 2 of them, I would just jump to D, and I would try D. So do f of 1 for D is equal to 4 times 1 minus 6. That's equal to negative 2. Okay, so they've all passed the first one. Now we get to f of 2 is equal to 4 times 2 minus 6. That would be 8 minus 6, which is equal to 2. It has to be 1. That's not correct. D cannot be the correct answer. So C is the correct answer. Now you might be able to see, okay, for every 1 increase in n, I see 3 increase in f of n, which means that the slope has to be 3. That's great if you can see that. If not, this method just takes a little bit longer, but we'll get you the correct answer at the end, which is C. Okay, moving on. Problem number 5. At Lincoln High School, approximately 7% of enrolled juniors and 5% of enrolled seniors were inducted into the National Honor Society last year. If there were 562 juniors and 602 seniors enrolled at Lincoln High School last year, which of the following is closest to the total number of juniors and seniors at Lincoln High School last year who were inducted into the National Honor Society? Okay, so what is the question asking for? Total number of juniors and seniors inducted into the Honor Society. So what is that total? So number inducted total is equal to number of juniors inducted plus the number of seniors inducted. Right, so juniors inducted plus seniors inducted. So what does that look like? Each of these will be the percentage of juniors inducted times total number of juniors plus, it's the same for seniors, percentage of seniors inducted times the total number of seniors. So plugging in numbers now, we have percentage of juniors inducted. 7% of enrolled juniors were inducted. So as a fraction, that's 0.07 times total number of juniors, 562. 562 total juniors plus percentage of seniors inducted, so 0.05 times total number of seniors was 602. This is the calculator section. Plug that expression straight into your calculator. You will end up with about 69.4. Look in the problem. They're saying which of the following is closest to the total number of juniors and seniors. So you can just look at all the answers they give you, which is closest. And it's easy because 69 sort of stands by itself. 69.4 is obviously closest to 69, not 140 or 39. So B is your correct answer, 69. Problem number 6, which of the following is the sum of the two polynomials shown above? So they've even made it handy for you. They have the x squared, x, and constant terms all lined up. It's literally just put a plus here and take the sum of each of these. Just to make that cleaner, I'm going to rewrite it over here. But 3x squared minus 5x plus 2, 5x squared minus 2x minus 6, right? So the sum of the two polynomials add together. 5 plus 3 is 8x squared. Negative 5 plus negative 2 is negative 7. X, positive 2 plus negative 6 is negative 4. So that is the correct answer. It is answer choice A. You have a 8, 7, 4, positive, negative, negative. Yep, that's correct. A is the correct choice. These other answers are just if you had flipped the sign either in the X or I guess down here if you had multiplied instead of added, you would have ended up with to the 4th power. But this is correct. I just note that this is the easiest way to do it, just put them together and sum it. If you did have to, or just thought it would be easier to write it out, you know, just combining the terms is like one line expression, 5x squared plus 3x squared minus 5x minus 2x plus 2 minus 6, you know, just putting them all together and combining terms. This will also get you the same answer, but this way is just a little bit quicker. Anyway, A is the correct answer. On to the next one. Problem number 7. If 3 over 5w is equal to 4 over 3, what is the value of w? Said it another way, just solve for w. So I'm going to rewrite over here just to make it cleaner. 3 over 5w is equal to 4 over 3. Of course, it's valid to multiply both sides by the same thing. And to make this out in front of w into 1, you would multiply by the reciprocal of this here. So multiply both sides by 5 over 3 times 5 over 3. Right? On the left-hand side, the 5's cross out, the 3's cross out. You're just left with w is equal to 4 over 3 times 5 over 3. You would then solve by, you can multiply straight across, multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators. 4 times 5 is equal to 20. 3 times 3 is equal to 9. And that is answer choice D. D is correct. Problem number 8. The average number of students per classroom at Central High School from 2000 to 2010 can be modeled by the equation y is equal to 0.56x plus 27.2, where x represents the number of years since 2000 and y represents the average number of students per classroom. Which of the following best describes the meaning of the number 0.56 in the equation? So what is this equation? It is the y is equal to mx plus b form of a line, where m is the slope, the change, and b is the intercept, the initial condition. And they're asking about this 0.56, which exists as m, so it is the slope. So keep that in mind when you're reading through each of your answer choices here. Does that 0.56, the slope, represent the total number of students at the school in 2000? Nope, that would be the initial condition. In fact, that's not even the initial condition because the B here is actually the number of students per classroom in 2000, which is what B asks for. So is it the average number of students per classroom in 2000? Nope, that is the initial condition. A was just completely wrong. Is it C, the estimated increase in average number of students per classroom each year? So this is correct because the slope of this is the change in Y is the number of students, X is per year, X is years. So the slope of that is students per year increase per classroom. So C is the correct answer here. Let's just read D for completeness. The estimated difference between the average number of students per classroom in 2010 and 2000, that is just incorrect. You'd have to sub in 2010 and 2000 into for X. D is just completely incorrect. So C is the correct answer. That 0.56 is the slope. It's the change every year. Okay, on to the next one. Problem number 9. Nate walks 25 meters in 13.7 seconds. If he walks at the same rate, which of the following is closest to the distance he will walk in 4 minutes? Okay, so first thing, this is a common need to change units on the SAT as minutes to seconds and sometimes to hours to days. So whenever you see this, they're giving you seconds, minutes, or hours, whatever. Convert it all to the same time scale. In this case, you have 4 minutes. Let's just put that into seconds. So 60 seconds in 1 minute. Minutes cancel here. A quick dimensional analysis. 60 times 4 is 240 seconds. Okay, now on to answering the problem. So one of the key things here is if he walks at this same rate. So let's call this 25 meters in 13 seconds, rate 1, and then this some number of meters in 4 minutes, rate 2. So, and they're the same. So you can say that rate 1 is equal to rate 2, right? They say that in the problem. It is the same rate. So what is rate 1? It is 25 meters in 13.7 seconds. And what is rate 2? It is some unknown number of meters, so x meters, in this 4 minutes, which we've converted to 240 seconds. Now we just need to solve that for x. So writing this out, multiply both sides by this 240. So we have 25 meters times 240 seconds divided by 13.7 seconds is equal to x meters. And you can check first that your units work out. The units of seconds will cancel. The units of meters remain. So you'll have meters is equal to meters. So go ahead and plug this into your calculator. What you'll come up with is that equals, this all ends up equaling about 437.96 meters. So 437.96. The problem does ask which of the following is closest to the distance he will walk. 437.9, about 438, is closest to this 450 meters. So answer choice B is correct. All right, questions 10 and 11 refer to the following information. The chart above shows approximations of the acceleration due to gravity in meters per second squared for the 8 planets in our solar system. Weight of an object on a given planet can be found using the formula W equals mg, where W is the weight of the object measured in newtons, m is the mass of the object in kilograms, and g is the acceleration due to gravity in meters per second squared. And just before we get into the actual problems, I'll note every SAT is going to have a problem like this where they use like physics, a bunch of concepts from physics like acceleration and mass and force. And it's really tempting to try to draw in other things from physics, like other equations for velocities and all sorts of things. You'll never have to do that on the SAT. All the information you need to solve this is going to be given right here. So avoid the temptation to make it more complicated than it actually is. You will not need, I know physics is fun. I love physics myself, but try to limit yourself to the information they give you in the problem to solve what they're asking for. With that said, let's go into the actual problem 10 here. What is the weight in newtons of an object on Mercury with a mass of 90 kilograms? So note the only equation that they give you in this paragraph is W equals mg. So know that you're going to be leaning pretty heavily on this W is equal to mg to start with. Anytime they give you an equation, you know that you're going to have to be using it. So you have two pieces of information here. One is that the mass is 90 kilograms. So that's 90 kilograms. You have that it is on Mercury. So from your table, you can get that the planet is Mercury. The acceleration g is 3.6 meters per second squared. And they're asking what is the weight. So W is what you're looking for. So at that point, the problem's pretty simple. Plug this into your calculator. So W is equal to 90 times 3.6, and that is 324. And then if you wanted to check units, kilograms times meters per second squared is newtons. In this case, that just works out. I guess that is one thing from physics, but the newtons is defined as kilograms times meters per second squared. Anyway, 324 is the number, and that is answer choice D. Problem 11. An object on Earth has a weight of 150 newtons. On which planet would the same object have an approximate weight of 170 newtons? Okay, so just like problem 10, you're going to be leaning on this W is equal to mg. It's the only equation they give you in that paragraph. W is equal to mg. So start with what you know about when it's on Earth. So you know that the weight is 150 newtons. You know that it is on Earth. So the acceleration due to gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared. Solve for this mass. So divide by 9.8. So the mass is equal to 150 divided by 9.8. Plug that into your calculator. You come up with 15.3 kilograms. Now that you know the mass is the same on Earth as it is on, what planet are they asking about here? Oh, you're looking for the planet. So the weight is the same on, or the mass is the same. The mass is the same on all the planets. So once again, go back to your equation. W is equal to mg. You know that the weight on this new planet is going to be 170 newtons. You've now found the mass to be 15.3 kilograms. And you are now solving for g. So take 170 divided by 15.3, plug that in your calculator. You come up with 11.11. That will be in units of meters per second squared. So 11.11, go to your table. 11.11 matches the gravity on Saturn. So Saturn is the correct answer. An object on Earth that weighs 150 newtons will weigh 170 newtons on which planet? The planet of Saturn. B is correct. Problem 12. If the function f has 5 distinct zeros, which of the following could represent the complete graph of f in the xy plane? So know that when you're graphing a function f in the xy plane, the f becomes f of x, and f of x is equal to y, and they're asking for zeros, right? So 0 means when does f of x equal 0, which since it's on an xy plane means when does y equal 0. So how many times does y equal 0? It equals 0 5 times. Where on these graphs does y equal 0? Y equals 0 when the graph crosses the x-axis, right? That's when y is equal to 0. So count on each of these graphs where it happens. On A, it happens 1, 2, 3, 4 times. That is not 5. A is incorrect. On B, it happens 1, 2, 3, 4 times. B is not correct. On C, it happens 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. It's greater than 5. C is incorrect. Hopefully D is right. So let's take a look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This D has 5 zeros. D is the correct answer. Problem 13. The equation above gives the height h in feet of a ball t seconds after it's thrown straight up with an initial speed of v feet per second from a height of k feet. Which the following gives v in terms of h, t, and k. Okay, this is actually another problem, just like a couple problems ago with the planets and the accelerations, where this is a concept from physics that they give you all this information about. This is in feet, this is in seconds. Oh, I know other velocity equations and parabolic equations from physics. You don't need any of it. The truth is, this problem, they'd be asking the exact same thing if you cross out all of this physics information. So if you crossed out all this, if they had just given you this equation, and which of the following gives v in terms of h, t, and k, this is the exact same problem. That's the important thing to know. That's why always focus in on just the sentence right before the question mark, because especially when they give you physics stuff like this, a lot of times that's all you need is what they're asking right before the question mark. Okay, into the actual problem, what they're asking for is which of the following gives v in terms of h, t, and k. Said another way, rearrange this equation to solve for v. Let's go ahead and work through that. I'm going to rewrite down here to make it clean. H is equal to negative 16t squared plus vt plus k. Let's start by subtracting k from both sides. So you have h minus k is equal to negative 16t squared plus v times t. We're looking to isolate v, so let's add 16t squared to both sides. So we have h minus k plus 16t squared is equal to vt. Okay, so to isolate v, all we have to do is divide by t. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch the sides too. I'm going to put v on the left-hand side. So v is equal to h minus k plus 16t squared, all divided by t. And just taking a quick glance at the answers, well, let's see what we have if anything matches. So obviously a does not work. It is not h plus k minus 16t. That's just incorrect. B does not work. H minus k plus 16. They drop this t squared term here when divided by t. B is incorrect. Now when we look at C and D, we see that they have h plus k or h minus k over t minus 16t. Why do they have this here? So all they did was broke this up into v is equal to h minus k divided by t plus 16t squared divided by t. And in this term here, you can eliminate a t. So make that t and t squared, which leaves you with h minus k divided by t plus 16t. And that's really your final answer. And that exists as answer choice D. D is the correct answer. Problem 14. The cost of using a telephone in a hotel meeting room is 20 cents per minute. Which of the following equation represents the total cost C in dollars for H hours of phone use? Okay, so obviously the tricky thing here is you're converting from minutes to hours within the equation. So before taking a look at any of the options they give you, try to set this up completely on your own. So you have C in dollars. So let's do this in terms of the units too, because units is really the tricky thing here. So we have C, which is in dollars, is equal to, we know that the telephone cost is 20 cents. So we'll just call that, we'll leave it 0.2. Okay, so 0.20, call this is in $20, $0.2 per minute. The information that we have is the number of hours. So we have times H, which is in hours. How do we convert? How do we reconcile these two things? We need to multiply by a conversion factor, which is number of minutes in 1 hour. And in this case, it would be 60 minutes in 1 hour. Do our units work out here? So over here we have minutes in the denominator. Over here we have minutes in the numerator. Here we have hours in the numerator, right? You can think of this as hours over 1 if you'd like. So we have hours in the numerator, hours in the denominator. All we're left with is dollars. All we're left with is dollars. Eliminating everything we crossed out, we now have C is equal to 0.20 times H times 60. So let's see if we have that as an answer choice over here. And it looks like A is that answer choice. So theirs is written a little bit differently. They have it 0.2 times 60 times H, but it's all multiplication. You can arrange it in any order you want. A is the correct answer. If you want to convince yourself, you can look at the other answers. This has 0.2 times H, which would be the 20 cents per minute directly multiplied by hours, and then just adding that 60. That doesn't make any sense at all. B, you can just cross out. C, they erroneously divide by this 0.2 rather than multiply. I guess you could get there if you accidentally had hours over minutes or something over here, but that's incorrect. And D makes a similar mistake where they divide by 60 rather than multiply. So those are incorrect. A is your correct answer here. Problem 15, a pretty wordy one. In order to determine if treatment X is successful in improving eyesight, a research study was conducted. From a large population of people with poor eyesight, 300 participants were selected at random. Half of the participants were randomly assigned to receive treatment X, and the other half did not receive treatment X. The resulting data showed that participants who received treatment X had significantly improved eyesight as compared to those who did not receive treatment X. Based on the design and results of the study, which the following is an appropriate conclusion? And this is an interesting one because there's really no math involved at all. It's more a science question. It's more like a design of experiments, interpreting results question, which is interesting. I think whoever wrote this particular SAT must have been like a science teacher because you had the physics problems and now you have this. Anyway, that's a diversion. Since you have to analyze which of the following is an appropriate conclusion, you have no choice but to read all of them and make an assessment of each statement. So let's take a look at A. Treatment X is likely to improve the eyesight of people who have poor eyesight. That's reasonable. Obviously, people were in a population with poor eyesight. The ones that were given the treatment improved. The ones that were not either didn't improve or didn't improve as much as who did receive the treatment. So A seems likely. It's still in the running, but we have to read all of them. That's just the nature of this problem. Treatment X improves eyesight better than all other available treatments. We can't say that. This paragraph makes no mention of other treatments. It just means your study was this treatment or no treatment at all. So you don't know anything about other treatments. C, treatment X will improve the eyesight of anyone who takes it. What they're looking for you to pull out here is from a large population of people with poor eyesight. So you can only draw conclusions about what the study population was, and that's people with poor eyesight. So when they say of anyone who takes it, that's a red flag, but this is incorrect because you can only apply it to people who have poor eyesight. Similar thing with D. Treatment X will cause a substantial improvement in eyesight. You cannot say that because this is only applicable to a population that already had poor eyesight. So that leaves you with A is correct. Treatment X is likely to improve the eyesight of people who have poor eyesight. Okay, A correct. Let's go to the next one. Problem 16. Graphs of the functions f and g are shown in the xy plane above. For which of the following values of x does f of x plus g of x equal 0? I know sometimes it can get overwhelming when you see f of x, g of x, multiple functions. What are they saying about these functions? They're simply asking for these values and their x values, the following values of x, when you pull off the y value off that plot, when you add their y values together, what equals 0? So we'll go through and do these one by one. So at the value x is equal to -3, what is f of x at -3? So x is equal to -1, -2, -3. At that point, at this point here, so for x equal to -3, it looks like f of x is equal to -1. And at that point, g of x is also -1. It's where they cross. So you have -1 plus -1 is equal to -2. That's not 0. A is incorrect. Let's take a look at it at point -2. So you have x equal to -1, x equal to -2. G of x is +2. F of x is -2. So you have f of x is -2 plus +2. that is equal to 0. So it looks like B is our correct answer. Let's just make sure we're not fooling ourselves. We'll do the other two just for completeness. You wouldn't necessarily have to do this on the SAT if you were being pressed for time, but I just like to show it for completeness. So at x is equal to -1, you have f of x is equal to -1, and this is, again, they cross. G of x is also equal to -1 at this point. So again, you have -1 plus -1 is equal to -2. That's incorrect. And finally, we have at x is equal to 0. So x is equal to 0 right here. F of x is equal to +2. And g of x is equal to, oh boy, it's way down here. So -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, it looks like. -9, a very negative number. That's equal to what, -7, clearly less than 0. B is your correct answer, -2. X is equal to -2. Question 17 and 18 refer to the following information. The quantity of a product supplied and the quantity of product demanded in an economic market are functions of the price of the product. The functions above are the estimated supply and demand functions for a certain product. The function S of P gives the quantity of products supplied to the market when the price is P dollars. The function dP gives the quantity of the product demanded by the market when the price is P dollars. So basically what they're saying there is this is a supply equation, this is the demand equation. Okay, so going to problem 17, how will the quantity of product supplied to the market change if the price of the product is increased by $10? Okay, so simplify some things for yourself. They're talking in this only about product supplied, not about product demanded at all. So sort of erase this in your head just for this problem. All they care about is this equation right here, product supplied. So how will have the quantity supplied, so that is S of P, right? S of P gives the quantity of product supplied. How will this number change if this number increases by $10? So you can see that if you had, let's say at first it was 0, right? So at 0 and then you increased it by 10. If you increase it by 10, your effect on SP, right, the constant will remain the same. But if you increase this by 10, you have to multiply it by 1/2. This increasing by 10 will increase S&P by 1/2 10, which is 5. So let's actually write that out another way. Let's say that your price was $10 to start with. So S of $10 is equal to 1/2 10 plus 40. That means that the product demanded at $10 will be 1/2 10 will be 5 plus 40. It will be 45. Whereas S of, let's say this was increasing by $10. So like they said, it's increasing by $10. So we're now at S of 20. S of 20 is equal to 1/2 20 plus 40. In this case, you'll have 10. 1/2 20 is 10 plus 40. You have 10 plus 40 is equal to 50, right? So what did we do here? We increased P by 10, and we got an increase in quantity of the difference between 50 and 45 is 5, right? So we increased by $10, we increased the quantity by 5. And that would be true whether you did, 30 and 40 here or anything increased by 10, this will always be changed by 5. All I said, what does that mean for your actual answer? The quantity supplied will decrease by 5 units. That is not correct. We saw that the quantity increased by 5. So the quantity supplied will be increased by 5 units. That is correct. It did increase by 5. And these other ones would be if you made a mistake in the math somewhere. They do say increase, but they get the numbers wrong. So, and that makes sense. You can also gut check this in your head, right? If the price were to increase, more people would want to supply more, because more people would want to supply this product because you're getting a better price for it, so the production would increase. So the quantity supplied will increase by 5 units. All right, enough said on that one, on to 18. So problem 18, using the same information as 17, At what price will the quantity of the product supplied to the market equal the quantity of the product demanded by the market? So they're saying the quantity supplied to the market is this SP, the quantity demanded is DP. They're saying that these are equal. So you can set these two expressions equal to one another. To make it cleaner, I'll do that over here. 1/2 P plus 40 is equal to 220 minus P. And they're asking at what price is actually the question, at what price. So they're asking what is the value of P where these are equal. So solve this equation for P. Let's start by subtracting 40 from both sides. So we'll be left with 1/2 P is equal to 220 minus 40 is 180 minus P. Add P to both sides. 1/2 P is just 0.5 P. So it's easier to see that you're going to be plugging this into your calculator anyway. So 0.5 P plus P is equal to 180, which means that this is 1.5 P is equal to 180. So P is equal to 180 divided by 1.5. Plug that into your calculator and you will see that P is equal to 120 when those two equations are equal. So 120 is answer choice B. B is the correct answer. Problem 19. Graphene, which is used in the manufacture of integrated circuits, is so thin that a sheet weighing 1 ounce can cover 7 football fields. If a football field has an area of approximately 1 1/3 acres, how many acres could 48 ounces of graphene cover? So this is all just a very wordy dimensional analysis problem, which just means converting the units. So let's start out with the amount that you're given. So that's 48 ounces. And basically we need to get that ounces into acres. So we're looking to convert ounces to acres, which is interesting. So what's our first conversion here? So we know that 1 ounce is equal to 7 football fields. So we have ounces in the numerator here. We need to get it in the denominator. So we have 1 ounce is equal to 7 football fields. Right? So ounces cancel. We now need to convert football fields to acres. So we have 1 football field is equal to 1 1/3 acres. So we need to put football fields in the denominator now. 1 football field over that is equal to 1 1/3 acres. So 1.333 acres. Just makes it easier to put in your calculator. So cross out football fields. We now have units of acres. About how many acres is what they're asking for in the problem. So you're good to go. Plug that into your calculator, just 48 times 7 times 1.333. You will end up with 447.9 acres, which is, taking a look at the possible answers, that is about 450. So C is your correct answer, 450 acres. If there's any question at all about dimensional analysis, it's one that shows up pretty often on the SAT, give me a comment. Maybe I can do a more in-depth video on dimensional analysis. It's on my list along with the equation of lines and equation of parabolas to do a more in-depth problem on dimensional analysis. So if anyone has any problem with that at all, give me a comment. Okay, we've reached the halfway point of this SAT section, so I'd like to give a huge thank you to the sponsor of this video, 3030 Learning, and in particular to the students of Mrs. Hanson. I really love the fact that you are finding my videos so helpful, and I really appreciate the sponsorship. Feel free, all students, leave comments as you use this in class. If you have any questions after class, I always like to record follow-up videos where there's questions, or just to hear that my videos have been helpful. And if anyone else would like to sponsor an SAT prep video or ACT math prep, AP statistics, AP physics, AP calculus, I do all of them. My email is in the description. Feel free to give me an email, and I'm sure we can work something out to get you a video that will help you prep for you or your students' tests. Okay, back to the point of this video, test 3, section 4, onward. Problem 20. Michael swam 2,000 yards on each of 18 days. The scatter plot above shows his swim time for and corresponding heart rate after each swim. The line of best fit for the data is also shown. For the swim that took 34 minutes, Michael's actual heart rate was about how many beats per minute less than the rate predicted by the line of best fit. Okay, this is all about being able to read a plot. So you have swimming time on the X, you have heart rate on the Y. They're asking about the swim that took 34 minutes. So take a look. Minutes is on your X-axis. 34 minutes is here. So they're talking about the specific data point here. This specific data point right here. And the question they're asking about it is about how many beats per minute less than the rate predicted by the line of best fit. So your line of best fit is right here. At 34 minutes, the line of best fit predicts 150 beats per minute. The actual was right here. So it's one demarcation less, one minor grid line less. So it looks like these are 140. So there is 5 lines between 140 and 150, which means that each line must be a unit of 2. So this is 142, for instance. This is 144. I know this writing's small, I'm sorry. This is 146, and this is 148. So the line of best fit was predicting 150. The actual was 148. So there was a difference of 2 beats per minute between the line of best fit and the actual recorded data. So your answer is B, 2. 21. Of the following 4 types of saving account plans, which option would yield exponential growth of the money in the account? And again, this is one of those ones you have to read each one and really evaluate each one individually. So let's do that, starting with A. Each successive year, 2% of the initial savings is added to the value of the account. So this is only adding 2% of the initial value. So because it's only that initial value and it's not compounding every year, you're not using the current balance, right, which would be 2%, and then the next year you'd get that 2% initial balance plus that 2% of the 2% that you got last year. When it says just of the initial, that cannot be an exponential growth. So A is incorrect. B, each successive year, 1.5% of the initial savings and $100 is added to the value of the account. Again, you're only doing that percentage based on the initial savings, so that cannot be exponential. And this $100 is unchanging, so that is not affecting whether this is exponential or not. B is incorrect. It is not exponential. C, each successive year, 1% of the current value is added to the value of the account. This is the key word here, is current value. So you get that 1%. The first year it would be your initial value, and then the next year you'd get 1% initial value plus a 1% on the 1% you got, which sounds small, but boy, compounding interest, powerful thing. So this is the correct answer because it says current 1% of the current value. And let's just read D for completeness. Each successive year, $100 is added to the value of the account. That would not at all be exponential because it's just a constant $100 per year. So D is incorrect. C is your correct answer. Problem 22. The sum of 3 numbers is 855. One of the numbers x is 50% more than the sum of the other 2 numbers. What is the value of x? And all they're doing here is it's sort of a tricky way of defining a systems of equations problem where each sentence gives you a different equation in the systems of equations. So let's break that down sentence by sentence. In this first sentence, the sum of 3 numbers is 855. So our 3 numbers, we'll call them x, y, and z. Their sum, so x plus y plus z, is 855. There's our first equation. The second equation, one of the numbers x is, so when they say x is, they mean x equals 50% more than the sum of the other 2 numbers. So 50% more would be multiplied by 1.5 more than the sum of the other 2 numbers. The other 2 numbers are y and z, and it is their sum. So plus. So now you have both your system of equations, your 2 equations in your system of equations. We are looking to solve for x. So what we need to do is take our second equation and solve for this yz such that we can just plug yz into our first equation. So how would we do that? Rearranging the second equation, divide both sides by 1.5. So you'll be left with x divided by 1.5 is equal to y plus z. And you can bet all this is going into your calculator by the end of this. So go ahead and simplify this. This is basically saying this is 1 divided by 1.5 x is equal to y plus z, right? So go ahead and just plug that 1 divided by 1.5 in your calculator right now, and you'll see that it is, so y plus z is equal to 0.6666, and that repeats x. Okay, so y plus z is equal to 0.6666x. Okay, so we can take this yz that we now know, and like we said, plug it into this first equation. That'll leave us with x plus 0.6666x is equal to 855. So remember, when we just have x, this is basically 1x. So 1x plus 0.6666x is equal to 1.6666x is equal to 855. Divide both sides by that 1.6666x is equal to 855 divided by 1.6666. Plug that into your calculator. You come up with 513.02. Okay, take a look at your answers. You have 513 on the money. You only have this 0.02. It's probably because we just rounded to 4 decimal places. Had you taken that out further, you probably would have gotten even closer to the exact 513. That is the answer, B, 513. Problem 23. The angles shown above are acute and sine of A is equal to cosine of B. If A is equal to 4k minus 22 and B is equal to 6k minus 13, what is the value of k? So they're looking for you to solve k in these equations. It will be a system of equations, but you don't quite have enough information yet. Obviously, to get that information, you have to use what's given in this first sentence. The angles shown above are acute and sine of A is equal to cosine of B. And I don't really like properties you have to come to the SAT memorized, but in this case, this sentence, the angles shown above are acute and sine A is equal to cosine B, is basically the definition of what's known as complementary angle property of sines and cosines. And if you know that, you can jump a few steps in what I'm about to explain. If you don't know what that property says, what it means, you can sort of derive it for yourself on the test and come up with it. So the way to do that is to think through what is the definition of sines and cosines, which you should know from geometry. So we'll start with sine of A, and we'll draw it here. So let's pretend you have this as a right triangle. Sine of A, sine of any number, is equal to the opposite side, the length of the opposite side, or the length of the hypotenuse. So that would be the length of the opposite side, which we're just going to call x right now. So we're going to call this x over hypotenuse. We'll give you the sine of A. Now let's consider cosine. Cosine is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. So in this case, you have, now let's consider this triangle here, where you have adjacent, which we're going to call x, over hypotenuse. Now, what we know is that the sine of A is equal to the cosine of B. And that means basically you can take this picture, flip it, and impose it onto this triangle. You're basically describing the same triangle where here you have angle A and here you have angle B. Where this is valid because this x that I've drawn here and this x that I've drawn here have to be one of the same. Since sine of A is equal to cosine of B, the hypotenuse must be equal, this x must be equal to make sine and cosine equal to one another. All taken together, what that means is that angle A and angle B are part of the same right triangle, which gives you the information you need to give yourself another equation in your system of equations, which is, you know, all the angles in a triangle must equal 180. So that means that on this triangle here, A plus B plus 90 is equal to 180. Subtract 90 from both sides to give yourself A plus B is equal to 90. At this point, you can plug in what you have given in the problem, your A's and B's. So plug in A, you have 4K minus 22. Plug in for B, 6K minus 13 is equal to 90. Combine like terms here. 4K plus 6K will give you 10K. Negative 22 plus negative 13 will give you negative 35. All this is equal to 90. Add 35 to both sides. That will give you 10K is equal to 125. Divide both sides by 10 will give you K is equal to 12.5. So K is equal to 12.5. That's what we were looking for all along. What is the value of K? Always good to check that you're solving what they're actually asking for. And 12.5 is available as C. So like I said at the top of this is a lot easier if you come in knowing that complementary angle property of sines and cosines. It would be completely understandable if you don't. If you'd like more explanation on that angle property of sines and cosines, leave a comment if the way I explained it did not make sense. I can do a separate video that goes in a lot more depth into that and other trigonometric properties and things like that. So feel free to leave a comment if you'd like to see that. On to the next one. Problem 24. Mr. Cole has a beaker containing n milliliters of solution to distribute to the students in his chemistry class. If he gives each student 3 milliliters of solution, he'll have 5 milliliters left over. But in order to give each student 4 milliliters of solution, he will need an additional 21 milliliters. How many students are in the class? So like a few problems before this, this is another way of using words to define a system of equations, where this first scenario, giving each student 3 milliliters, defines the first equation, and the second scenario, in order to give 4 milliliters of solution, describes the second equation. So both of these equations will start with n. So he has n milliliters to distribute. So n is equal to, starting with that first scenario, each student gets 3 milliliters of solution. So you'll have 3 milliliters of solution multiplied by the number of students. So we'll call that x. You'll have 5 milliliters left over. So you distributed 3 times the number of students, and then n still has 5 at the end. So plus 5 will give you n total, right? So n will break down to 3 times the number of students plus the 5 you have left over. In the second scenario, you again have n is equal to, now you're giving each student 4 milliliters, so 4 times x, but you have a deficit of 21 milliliters. You can't do it by 21 milliliters, so you are minus 21 milliliters. Okay, so you can now set these two equations equal to one another. We'll combine and write over here. So we have 3x plus 5 is equal to 4x minus 21. Just to do a good sanity check, what we're looking for is how many students are in the class. That's what we've defined as x here. So we're just looking to solve this for x. So subtract 5 from both sides. Actually, add 21 to both sides so we keep these numbers positive. So we'll do 3x, 5 plus 21 plus 26 is equal to 4x. Subtract 3x from both sides. You'll be left with 26. We just subtracted the 3x here. 4x minus 3x is equal to 1x, or just x. So there you go. That's the end. 26 is equal to x. X is defined as our number of students. They're looking for how many students are in the class. It is 26. So D, 26 is your correct answer. Problem 25. A grain silo is built from 2 right circular cones and a right circular cylinder, with internal measurements represented by the figure above. Of the following, which is the closest volume of the grain silo in cubic feet? Okay, so first thing to start off, they're looking for the answer in cubic feet. You see that all the measurements given are in feet conveniently, so there's not going to be any sort of unit conversion to worry about here. To get those volume measurements, probably the most important thing in this problem is realize you have these equations given to you on the equation sheet, the first sheet of this section. I'll reproduce just the volume the volume segment of that equation sheet here. So what's important is you have one right circular cylinder, right? A right circular cylinder, so that's the one I circled, and two right circular cones, so that is this volume equation here. The other ones you won't need for this question. So putting that all together, the volume total is equal to the volume of that cylinder, right? You have one upright cylinder plus 2 times the volume of the cone. They say two right circular cones which have the same radius and height. So 2 times the volume of the cone. Plug in the equations for that. We have V total is equal to V cylinder is equal to pi r squared times h. And you have to be careful because there's different heights for, right? The height of the cone is 5 feet. The height of the cylinder is 10 feet. So these are different numbers. The height of the cylinder plus 2 times, plug this equation in, 1/3 pi r squared times height of the cone. Plug in numbers for that. If you'd like, you can just go ahead and plug this into your calculator right there. You don't, on your test, you don't necessarily have to write it out yourself, but I will just for clarity. Pi times the radius here is this 5 feet. So 5 squared times height of the cylinder. The height of the cylinder is just 10 feet here, so times 10 plus 2 times 1/3 pi. Again, the radius of the cone is again 5 feet. So 5 squared. Height of the cone now is 5 feet times 5. Plug all that right into your calculator. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Or if you want to do an intermediate step, you calculate just this and just this, and then add them together. I think it's just as easy just to do it all together. So volume total, what you get spit out is 1,047.2 feet cubed. That is available as answer choice D. Problem 26. In the xy plane, the line determined by the points 2, k and k, 32 passes through the origin. Which of the following could be the value of k? So I'm starting to sound a little bit like a broken record, but this is another problem where they're basically using words to set up a system of equations. Where in this case, the system of equations that they're setting up is you can calculate the slope two ways, right? So they're giving you one point here. They're giving you the point 2, k. They're giving you another point, k, 32, and they're giving you a third point, pass through the origin, which just means that the line also passes through 0, 0. And that's important because this has both x and y defined. So you can use it to calculate the slope between the origin and this point, and the slope between the origin and this point. So let's go ahead and do that. First, recall that the equation for slope is rise over run, which means that rise will be the change in y, so y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. In both cases, we'll use 0, 0 as y1 and x1 and the other point as y2 and x2. So let's use this 2, k. Slope, I'm going to call this m just to be consistent. Slope m is equal to k, that's y2, minus 0 over 2. So that's k and 2 minus 0. So slope there is k divided by 2. Now let's use this second point they give us. M is equal to, in this case we have 32 as y2 minus 0 because we're going through the origin, and we have x2 is k minus 0, so m is equal to 32 over k. Now both of these are equal to m, right? K over 2 is equal to m, 32 over k is equal to m. So you can set these two equal to one another. So you can say k divided by 2 is equal to 32 divided by k. Solve for k. Start by multiplying k by both sides to get the k out of the denominator here. You'll have k squared divided by 2 is equal to 32. Multiply both sides by 2. You'll have k squared is equal to 64. 32 times 2 is 64. So k is equal to the square root of 64, which you can plug in your calculator you like, or know that it is 8. So k is equal to 8, which the following could be the value of k. 8 is correct. 8 is the value of k. There might be other values of k, but 8 shows up here, and we showed that 8 could be a value of k. So in this case, C, 8 is the correct answer. Problem 27. A rectangle is altered by increasing its length by 10% and decreasing its width by p%. If these alterations decrease the area of the rectangle by 12%, what is the value of p? So looking for this value of p, which is embedded in the decrease in width. But they're really giving you 3 separate pieces of information. The way the area is changing, the way the length is changing, and the way the width is changing. So you can make those into 3 separate equations. And let's start in the order that they give it to us. So they're saying the length was increased by 10%. So they're saying that the length at the end of this, the length final, was equal to the length initial by increased by 10%. So multiplied by 1.1, that 0.1 being the increase of 10%, right? So that's the change in length. Next, they talk about the change in width. The width was decreased by p%. So you have the width final is equal to the width initial, but decreased by p. So you have the 1, which would be, if you just multiplied it by 1, it would be 100%, but it's not. It's subtract out this p%, or the fractional amount of the percent represented as a fraction, times the width initial. So you multiply by this lower than 100% number to get the width final. And finally, you have the area final is equal to the area initial. Do the same thing as you did with width because you're decreasing. It's decreased by 12%. So in this case, we know the amount is decreasing by. It's 12% or 0.12 when represented as a fraction, which means you can go ahead and do that math here. Area final is equal to 0.88 times area initial. Okay, so what ties all this together? And it's knowing the geometry here. So this equation is given on the first page of your equation sheet if you should need it. But the area of a rectangle is area is equal to length times width, right? And that's valid at both the initial and the final condition. So the area of the initial rectangle is equal to length initial times width initial, and the area of the final is equal to length final times width final. And we just went through and put these in terms of length final, width final, area final. So let's go ahead and use this equation first. So we have our area final is equal to this 0.88 area initial. So let's go ahead and put that in. 0.88 times area initial is equal to length final is this 0.11 length initial. So 1.1 times length initial times our width final is equal to 1 minus p times our width initial. Now, let's use this equation that we know about the initial area to substitute in for this area initial here. So we'll do 0.88 times length initial times width initial is equal to 1.1 times length initial times 1 minus p times width initial. Okay, and now you can see that you can get rid of these length initials and width initials. First, divide both sides by li, and these are all just one, each side is just basically one term multiplied together. So it's valid to just subtract out li, or not subtract out, divide both sides by li, then divide both sides by wi, right, the width initial, divide both sides by the width initial, and that simplifies your problem so that the only variable you're left with is p. So you have 0.88 is equal to 1.1 times 1 minus p. Now, divide both sides by 1.1, so you'll have 0.88 divided by 1.1 is equal to 1 minus p. Go ahead, throw this in your calculator right now. Do 0.88 divided by 1.1. You'll see that 0.8 is equal to 1 minus p. Add p to both sides. You'll get p plus 0.8 is equal to 1. And then subtract 0.8 from both sides, and you will get that p is equal to 0.2. So remember, we did this when we defined our equations over here. P is the fractional amount, but they're looking for p as a percentage. So multiply that by 100. So p is 0.2 times 100, just to convert to percentage, will give you 20%. So that is your final answer, 20%, and it is available as answer choice C, 20%. Problem 28. In planning maintenance for a city's infrastructure, a civil engineer estimates that starting from the present, the population of the city will decrease by 10% every 20 years. If the present population of the city is 50,000, which of the following expressions represent the engineer's estimate of the population of the city t years from now? So this is an equation. This uses an equation that you'll see once or twice per SAT. You should definitely have it memorized coming in. And it's the compounding growth equation. It's anytime you see a population. They usually use population or dollar amounts. So if you see something growing X% per year or decreasing X% per year, it should signal you that you need to use this equation. And so it is, in this case, it's population. So we'll say P, the population final at the end of whatever growth period or contraction period you're interested in, is equal to the population initial, so what it is before the period you're interested in, times 1 minus, or 1 plus, so 1 plus in the case of growth, I, which is your growth rate, and then N will be the number of periods that that growth rate applies to between when you're interested in population initial versus population final. So for our specific problem, they're looking for estimate of the population t years from now. So looking for the population of the future. So this is what we're looking to get out of our equation, is equal to population initial. If the present population is 50,000, so that's easy, that's 50,000. 1. So now I is saying we have a decrease by 10%. So I will be negative 0.1 because we're decreasing, right? So we have to make that negative. So this will end up being minus 0.1. And now N is very important. So N is the number of periods that we're interested in. And N in this case is every 20 years. So N, it's not that we're decreasing 10% every year, we're decreasing 10% every 20 years, which means that in terms of t, whereas if t is every year, we have to divide that by 20 because N would be one cycle. So in this case, one cycle is 20 years, where one, or said another way, 1 year represents 1/20th of a cycle, right? So that's why you have t divided by 20 in your final equation. So all there is to simplify here is doing that 1 minus 0.1. You'll be left with 0.9 times t divided by 20. Take a look over here. This one has the exponent wrong. This one has the exponent wrong. And B is incorrect because it has, this would be if you had switched up your 1 and I when you were doing your subtraction, or just, I guess, just put in 10%. In any case, B is incorrect. D matches the equation that we found here. D is the correct answer. Problem 29. The incomplete table above summarizes the number of left-handed students and right-handed students by gender for the 8th grade students at Keisel Middle School. There are 5 times as many right-handed female students as there are left-handed female students. And there are 9 times as many right-handed male students as there are left-handed male students. If there is a total of 18 left-handed students and 122 right-handed students in the school, which of the following is closest to the probability that a right-handed student selected at random is female? That is a ton of information, and I think that's why they sort of give you an assist here by making this chart that you can kind of use to fill things in. So let's take it step by step. Well, first understand what they're asking for. So I always say, what's right before the question mark? They're saying, what is the probability that a right-hand student selected at random? So right-hand student selected at random, which means only from this 122 is female. So they're looking for this column right here. If you're selecting from this 122, what is the probability that it comes from this cell right here, right, is female? So that's what we're looking to calculate, basically. We know the 122. We need to calculate this cell. Let's start populating from the information they give us. So this whole first sentence is just kind of background information, telling you that there's a table you can fill in. The meat of this really starts right here with this sentence. There are 5 times as many right-handed female students as there are left-handed female students, which means if you define the number of left-handed female students as X, there are 5 times as many right-handed female students. So 5X, right? 5 times as many. In the next sentence, or right after the comma, there are 9 times as many right-handed male students as there are left-handed male students. So called left-handed male students, there's Y number of them, and there's 9 times as many right-handed male students. Okay, so with this information, you can basically set up 2 equations. You can use the first column to set up one equation because you know the number of female plus male students must equal the total. So you can use that for the left-handed students, and you can use that separately for the right-handed students. What does that mean set up? It means that just adding up everything in this column, you have X plus Y is equal to the total number of students who are left-handed, 18. Doing the same thing for the right-hand column, you have 5X plus 9Y is equal to the total number of students, 122. And now you have a system of equations you can work with. Remember, in the end, what we're trying to calculate is this 5x to give us our input for our probability. So we're looking to calculate that 5x. Let's start by solving the system of equations for x or y. You'll have to solve for both of them, so solve for either one. So to make this easier, let's multiply every term of this top equation by 5. So that this becomes easier to solve, basically subtract one equation from another. So multiply that top equation by 5, every term by 5. That'll give you 5x plus 5y is equal to 18 times 5 is 90. We'll give you, and then you're just subtracting from, we'll leave the second equation alone, 5x plus 9y is equal to 122. Subtract. The 5x's cancel. 5 minus 9 is negative 4y is equal to 90 minus 122 is equal to negative 32. So negative 32 divided by negative 4y is equal to 8. 32 divided by 4, you can do that on your calculator if you'd like. Now that you know that y is equal to 8, you can plug it into the first equation you have here, so that x plus y is equal to 18. I'm just going to rewrite it here. So you can plug this in for y here, which will give you x plus 8 is equal to 18. Just subtract 8 from both sides. You're left with x is equal to 10. Okay, so that's really the key thing here. Now you know x is equal to 10. Remember, what we're gunning for is to get this box filled in. So go ahead, plug in your x is equal to 10. Right here. So 5x, now that we know that x is equal to 10, is equal to 50. So that's really the important thing. Now, going back to what the problem's asking for, what is the probability? And we discussed probability in an earlier problem. So probability is equal to the number of positive outcomes. So in this case, a positive outcome is selected at random is female. So number of positive outcomes, or events, I think I called them events in an earlier problem, over the total number of all possible outcomes, whether they're positive or not. And we're selecting from only right-handed students, so a right-handed student selected at random, so only of this 122 number of all possible. So now, number of positive outcomes meaning that the right-handed student selected is female, is 50. Over all possible outcomes, we're selecting from a group of 122 students. So divide 122, and that is equal to, you can just throw that into your calculator, 0.410. And it's really important to understand that you're only selecting from these right-handed students. Remember, only right-handed students, and you're only giving a positive outcome if they are female to get this 50 over 122 correct. So you end up with 0.410. 0.410 is A. A is your correct answer. Problem 30. In the equations above, B and C are constants. If B is C minus 1/2, which of the following is true? Okay, so let's start by taking some of these things that are in words and putting them into equations. So the easiest pickings here is B is C minus 1/2. So all that's saying is B is equal to C minus 1/2. Let's also take a minute to look at our answer choices here, and they all have X is. So where you see this X is, it means that what they're looking for in the answer is X is equal to something. In this case, X is Y, and then they have plus or minus some constant, right? Okay, so all that is background. Let's look at the two equations that they give us up here. And we see that they have B and C here, and we know that we have this adjustment, or we have this other equation that we can substitute in. We can put substitute in C minus 1/2 for B. Before we do that, let's rearrange these equations a little bit to make our lives easier. Specifically, solve them so that B and C is isolated on the left-hand side, so that you can eventually set them equal to one another by solving for C. I'll show that all in a little detail here. So subtract 3x from both sides on this top one. So you'll have B is equal to 5x minus 3x is 2x minus 7. And on the bottom one, subtract 3y from both sides. You'll have C is equal to 5y minus 3y is 2y minus 7. Now go ahead, bring in this B is equal to C minus 1/2 to your top equation here, which will give you, we're just substituting out that B for C minus 1/2 is equal to 2x minus 7. Add 1/2 to both sides. So negative 7 plus 1/2 is now negative 6.5. So we now have C is equal to 2x. We're just adding that 1/2 to make this negative 6.5 now. So now we have two equations for C. We have C is equal to 2x minus 6.5, and we have C is equal to 2y minus 7. Set those, they're both equal to C, set them equal to one another now to give you 2x minus 6.5 is equal to 2y minus 7. Add 6.5 to both sides. That will leave you with 2x is equal to 2y. Negative 7 plus 6.5 is now just minus 0.5. Divide everything by 2 to just give you x. X is equal to 2y divided by 2 is just equal to y. Minus 0.5 divided by 2 is now 0.25. And now we have what we were looking for. We have x is equal to y plus or minus something, right? And now we have that plus or minus something is minus 0.25. And of course, minus 0.25 is just minus 1 over 4, right? So now we know that we have x is equal to y minus 1 over 4 minus 1/4. Take a look for that in your results. And it looks like answer choice A, x is y minus 1 over 4 is correct. Answer choice A. Problem 31. This is starting into the free response section. So tickets for a school talent show cost $2 for students and $3 for adults. If Chris spends at least $11 but no more than $14 on X student tickets and one adult ticket, what is one possible value of X? So problems like this, they're setting you up, you have the total amount spent. So you have total of $11 spent, and you know that at least that was spent. So you're going to be setting up an equation, number of adult tickets, number of student tickets for what he spent. But the total spent is $11, and he spent at least that, which means 11 is less than or equal to the amount he actually spent, which is the equation we're going to set up. So he spent one adult ticket and it was $3. So you know he spent $3 on that adult ticket plus $2 per student ticket. So he spent $2 per ticket with X number of tickets bought. Okay, so you can go ahead without using any other information. You know that this is 11 less than or equal to. So go ahead, just solve this equality. Subtract 3 from both sides. That'll leave you with 8 less than or equal to 2x. Divide by 2. That'll leave you with 4 less than or equal to x. What they're looking for is one possible value of x. Remember, you have this equal to here, which means that x can equal 4, right? So this would be, you're allowed to say 4 equals x would satisfy. He could have bought 4 tickets. So one possible value of x is 4. You could end the problem right there. You don't even need to know about this $14. If for some reason you thought about this the other way, on the other side of this inequality, again, you could be done right here. I'm just completing in case you approach this a different way. But you could also say, okay, $14, he spent no more than $14. So 14 is the upper bound, right? Again, equal to no more than. So you've got less than $14. And do the same thing on this side. So you have 3 plus 2x equals to 14. Subtract 3 from both sides. 2x less than equal to 14. That'll be 11. 11 divided by 2, you'll have x less than equal to 5.5. So that means you can't buy half a ticket, right? So that means that if you just, it has to be less than 5.5, which means that 5, right, would also be a valid answer. Just 5, because you couldn't buy that extra half ticket. So the answer to this problem, because you can only buy a whole number of tickets, are 5 or 4, right? Because 4 is the minimum amount you could buy, 5.5 is the maximum amount you can buy, but he couldn't have bought 5.5. So 5 is the max he could have bought. If it were me, I would have just stopped at calculating this 4, bubbled in 4, but if you answered 5, also correct. Okay, moving on to 32. Problem 32. The table above lists the ages of the first 12 United States presidents when they began their terms in office. According to the table, what was the mean age in years of these presidents at the beginning of their term? Round your answer to the nearest tenth. Okay, so this is a pretty easy problem with a couple things that they're kind of just testing you know, or that you read the problem right. First of all is that you know what the mean is. So mean is just another word for average, which means take all of these ages. So you'll have 57 for Washington, plus 62 for Adams, plus 58, plus 58, 58, and so on for all 12 of these presidents, and then divide by the total number. So you'll be dividing by 12. And that's easy enough to throw into your calculator. Just make sure you throw parentheses around what you're adding. Add all those up, divide by 12. If you do the intermediate step of just doing the adding and dividing by 12, you come up with 703 divided by 12. Plug all that into your calculator and you come up with 58.58333, repeating from there. So the one thing that they're testing that you're reading that's very important is this last bit, round your answer to the nearest tenth. So make sure the tenth place is here, so make sure you're rounding your answer off there. And it says to the nearest tenth, it doesn't say round down or round up or round down, but in this case 58 point, because this is 5 and the next number is 8, 5 or greater, it means round up to 58.6. So because it says to the nearest tenth, you'll only get credit if you bubble it in as 58.6, that exact number. Okay, on to the next one. Problem 33, if the expression above is rewritten in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are constants, what is the value of b? So all they're asking is simplify this and look at what is the constant in front of the x term. So we'll go ahead and do that. Start by multiplying this 2 through to each of these terms. So we'll leave the first, what's in parentheses there, alone first. So we'll have minus 2x squared and then minus 2 times negative 2x will be plus 4x, and then plus 2. So combine like terms, you'll have negative 3x squared minus 2x will be negative 5x squared. Then you have 5x plus 4x. 5 plus 4 will be 9x. And then negative 2 plus 2 is just 0. Not that it matters. The only one you care about, so plus 0. The only one that you care about is what's in front of the x, because that's b. They're asking what is the value of b. So your answer is 9. So you would bubble in 9. Problem 34. In a circle with a center O, central angle AOB has a measure of 5 pi over 4 radians. The area of the sector formed by the central angle OAB is what fraction of the area of the circle? So first thing, they're working in radians. They're asking about what fraction of a full circle. So you have to know how many radians are in one revolution of a full circle. And if you forget, this information about radians is on the first sheet of your test. This is taken right from that first sheet. The number of radians of an arc in a circle is 2 pi. So just for the visual, you have a circle. One full revolution around is 360 degrees, or 2 pi radians, to go all the way around to fill the full circle. Now what they're saying is you have a circle, or they're working with a circle where you have an angle formed by AOB. I don't actually remember exactly where that ends up, but it looks something like that, where you're only working with this area here, and the amount that you're traveling is 5 pi over 4 radians. Now the equation for the area of a circle is area is equal to pi r squared. And the fractional area here in this one, in our second one that we've drawn versus the first one, will be proportional to this angle. Will be proportional to this angle. And this one is the full 2 pi revolution, and this one is only the 5 pi over 4. Because it's proportional, the fraction of the area will be the same as the fraction of the angle. So in this case, you have the fraction of the angle is the angle that you're interested in. So 5 pi over 4 divided by the full circle, which is 2 pi. So this is the fraction, both of the area. It's of the angles, but it is of the area too, because it's the same fraction. So you can rewrite this by over 2 pi. That's equivalent to, just to make the math a little easier, 5 pi divided by 4 times 1 divided by 2 pi. That is equal to, numerator is 5 pi times 1, just 5 pi, times 4 times 2 divided by 8 pi. The pi's cancel, and that is equal to 5 divided by 8. You can bubble it in like that, or put it in your calculator and come up with 0.625. Either way of bubbling it in works. That is the correct answer. Problem 35. An online store receives customer satisfaction ratings between 0 and 100 inclusive. In the first 10 ratings the store received, the average of the arithmetic mean of the ratings was 75. What is the least value the store can receive for the 11th rating and still be able to have an average of at least 85 for the first 20 ratings? Okay, so they use the word average. They define it as arithmetic mean. It's the same thing in the problem a bunch of times. So what does that mean? What is arithmetic mean mathematically? And it is simply the sum of all observations. So I call them AI. In this case, an observation would be what is the value of one review on the scale of 0 to 100 divided by the total number of reviews. So let's go ahead and pull that out so I show you what you mean. What comes right before the question mark? What do I always say? They have an average of at least 85 for 20 ratings. So how do you plug that into the equation I just showed for arithmetic mean? Well, you'd have, so you have an average of 85 for 20 rankings. Let's say all of them were 85, right? That's valid. If every single one of them was 85, the mean has to be 85. So you'd have 85 plus 85 plus 85, on and on, right? For 20, you'd have 20 ratings, all 85, divided by those 20 ratings, right? And or said another way, you'd have 85 times 20, right? Just sum them all rather than writing out plus, 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 plus. You just do 85 times 20 divided by 20. And that seems obvious, right? Because you can cross out the 20, you get back to 85. You say, okay, Adam, so what? But here's where that becomes important. So let's write this out and do it for everything they define this problem, right? Because they give you the 10 ratings were 75 and the 11th rating was you don't know. Let's write that all out in one expression. So we'll start with this one we just did and put it on the left-hand side because it's what we are looking for in the end, right? It must be equal to this. So we'll put that 85 times 20 divided by 20. And now let's go through each rating individually, okay? So for the first 10 ratings, they had 75. So the same way I did over here, you can define that as every single one was 75. So 75 times 10, right? Instead of just writing 75 plus 75 plus 75, it's just 75 times 10 divided by 10, right? Because we have the 10 there. Now let's say we don't want to do the average yet. We don't want to compute that yet. We have more rankings to put in here. The 11th ranking, we don't know the value of. There's only one of them, so it's x times 1. So just x, because there's only one, and there's one ranking there. Now we know to get to 20, we had 11 rankings. We have 9 more to go. And the problem does not define what they are. They said they can be anything, and we're looking for what is the least value 11 could be. So we need to maximize what those other 9 are. So let's say that those other 9 are 100. So you do 100 times the 9 rankings that are left to get to 20. And of course, put plus 9 on the bottom to bring your denominator up to 20. So let's simplify this right-hand side. 75 times 10, 750. Leave the plus x. And then 100 times 9 is 900. Divided by 10 plus 1 plus 9 is 20. At this point, we see on our far left-hand side and our right-hand side, are both divided by 20. So just multiply both sides by 20. So that means you can cross this out, cross that out. And do this 85 times 20 that's on the left-hand side. Calculator section, you can plug it into your calculator and come up with 85 times 20 is 1700 is equal to this 750 plus 900 is 1650. So 750 plus 900, and then you still have your plus x here, so plus x. Subtract 1650 from both sides, and you're left with just x. 1750 minus 1650 is just 50. X is equal to 50. Check that this is what the problem was asking for. What is the least value of the 11th ranking? So the 11th ranking can be 50, while the first 10 are 75 and the last 9 are 100 to get an average of 85. So 50 is correct. It's what you'd bubble in for the least value that the 11th review could be. Okay, next problem. Problem 36, in the xy plane of a point with the coordinates a comma b lies in the solution set of the system of inequalities above. What is the maximum possible value of b? So they're telling you that this AB would satisfy this system of equations. So simply rewrite, to start with, rewrite this as, because you're doing a definite point, you can change these to equal to. So B is substituting in for Y. So B is equal to negative 15 times A plus 3,000. And do the same thing on the bottom. B is substituting in for Y is equal to 5A. So you see that you now have two equations that are equal to one another with the B. So set them equal to one another by placing 5A on the left-hand side. So 5A, just substituting this B into here. So 5A is equal to negative 15A plus 3,000. Now solve for A, divide both sides by 5. A is equal to negative 15 divided by 5 is negative 3A. Plus 3,000 divided by 5 is 600. Add 3a to both sides to get rid of this negative 3a, right? Add 3a to both sides will give you 4a is equal to 600. Divide both sides by 4, and a is equal to 150. Now be careful to go back and read the problem. They're asking for the maximum possible value of b, not a, so this is just an intermediate. Come back to this equation that they give you here, just because it's the easy. You could use either of these, but this is the easier one of the two. So go ahead and use this one. You now have y is less than or equal to 5x, which means that b is less than or equal to 5a, right? Because we're working with this point here. Plug a in right here. So that means that B is less than or equal to 5 times 150. So B must be less than or equal to 5 times 150 is 750. And they're looking for the maximum possible value of B. Because B must be less than or equal to 750. When it is equal to 750, that's the highest it can be, right? It can be lower than that, but the maximum it could be would be equal to 750. So 750 is your answer that you would bubble in on your test. Questions 37 and 38 refer to the following information. If shoppers enter a store at an average rate of R shoppers per minute, and each stays in the store for an average time of T minutes, the average number of shoppers in the store N at any one time is given by the formula N is equal to R times T. This relationship is known as Little's Law. The owner of Good Deal store estimates during business hours an average of 3 shoppers per minute enter the store, and that each of them stays an average of 15 minutes. The store owner uses Little's Law to estimate that there are 45 shoppers in the store at any time. Okay, before even trying to digest that information, read the problem to know what of this you actually will need. So problem 37, Little's Law can be applied to any part of the store, such as a particular department or checkout lines. The store owner determines that during business hours, approximately 84 shoppers per hour make a purchase, and each of those shoppers spends an average of 5 minutes in the checkout line. Anytime during business hours, about how many shoppers on average are waiting in the checkout line to make a purchase at Good Deal's store. Okay, so the most important thing to get off the bat is the first line here. They say Little's Law can be applied to any part of the store, such as the checkout lines, and then they go on to give you the definition at just the checkout lines. What this signals is you don't care about the store as a whole. All this information they give you about in the store, you don't need for this particular problem. Don't cross it out because you might need it for problem 38, but for right now, when you're doing problem 37, you can put that out of your mind. All you need is the information given in this first paragraph here. So you know you're going to be applying this Little's Law. So what is it? N is equal to RT. So let's put N is equal to R times T. What are they asking for in the problem? How many shoppers on average are waiting in the checkout line? What this Little's Law tell you is the average number of shoppers, this says in the store, but we're talking about just in the checkout line, N. So we're looking to solve for N. So this is already configured correctly for us, is equal to R. They define R as shoppers per minute. So let's look into our problem. We say they have approximately 84 shoppers per hour. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is pull this information out. 84 shoppers per hour. Convert to minutes by saying 1 hour. 1 hour is 60 minutes. 60 minutes. So the hours cancels. This will give you shoppers per minute. So it's just 84 divided by 60, or 84 times 1 divided by 60. Either way will get you the same thing. So 84 divided by 60 is equal to 1.4 shoppers per minute. So that is our value for R. Go ahead and plug that in. So 1.4 shoppers per minute times this T. Each stays in the store for an average time of T minutes. We said that the shopper spends an average of 5 minutes. So here we can put in 5 minutes. Minutes is in the denominator here, numerator here. It will cancel. We'll be left with units of shoppers, or just number of shoppers, which is what we're looking for at the end. We're looking for a number of shoppers. So just plug this into your calculator now. 1.4 times 5. Do that and you come up with 7. So there are 7 shoppers on average waiting in the checkout line to make a purchase at a Good Deal store. That is what we're looking for. 7 is the answer that you would bubble in. Problem 38, we've made it to the end here. The owner of the Good Deal store opens a new store across town. For the new store, the owner estimates that during business hours, an average of 90 shoppers per hour enter the store, and each of them stays an average of 12 minutes. The average number of shoppers in the new store at any time is what percent less than the average number of stores in the shopper in the original store at any time? No, ignore the percent symbol. This just says don't use the percent symbol when you're bubbling in. Okay, so in the information given originally, they already did the Little's Law for us. They said the shop owner uses Little Law to estimate there are 45 shoppers in the store at any time. So that's the old store, 45 shoppers at any time. We can use Little's Law here, just like we did in the previous problem. We need n number of shoppers is equal to r times t. R in this case is 90 shoppers per hour. They're pulling the same thing they did in the last problem where you got to convert that. So you have 90 shoppers per hour times 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. The hours cancel out. To get into shoppers per minute, 90 divided by 60, R is equal to 90 divided by 60 is just 1.5. 1.5 shoppers per minute. And T is 12 minutes, so plug that in down here. You have 1.5 shoppers per minute. By the way, on your test, you wouldn't necessarily, if you just can sort of visualize this in your head, and this is true for every problem, but I'll say it because this is the last problem. If you can visualize any of this head, just plug it into your calculator. You don't have to write it out. I'm just writing it out here to be completely clear in what I'm doing. I didn't want to, just not write some things. But some of this you might be able to just do in your head, and if that's the case, or just do it in your calculator. If that's the case, go right ahead and do that. Okay, where was I? R was 1.5. T was 12 minutes. So 12 minutes. So minutes in the denominator here, numerator here, those cross out. Plug into your calculator 1.5 times 12. That will be 18 shoppers in the store, in the new store, at any one time. So in the old store they had 45. In the new store they have 18 at any given time. They're asking the average number in the new store at any time is what percent less. So to get percent change is equal to the old value minus the new value divided by the old value. Okay, and that's just the formula for percent change. It's another one of those ones you should have memorized for the SAT. So the old value is 45 minus 18 divided by 45. So when you do all that, you come out with 0.6. Actually, there's one thing that's a misnomer here. So this is a fractional amount, right? So to actually get it into percent, you have to multiply by 100. Sometimes you want the fractional amount, but remember in this, in fact, they gave you this clue by telling you about, how to enter the percent. You need to multiply by 100 to put that into a percentage. So that will equal 60%. And like they said on the up here, all you have to do is bubble in 60. And that will be your answer. Okay, we've completed the test. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe. If you still have questions, give it a comment. I am more than happy to go into more detail on anything I've explained. And as I said before, if you have suggestions for future videos, please put in the comments. If it's something even outside the SAT, ACT, Stat, Calc, anything, my email's in the description. Go ahead and give me an email. I'm sure we can work something out to get a video made for you. Thank you very much for watching, and good luck on your SAT.